The Draconis Imperial Station floated in the darkness of space like a massive jewel. Its walls were made of crystal and metal that shined under the light of distant stars. Inside the station, hundreds of different alien species lived and worked together. But the most important residents were the dragons themselves. They had built this place thousands of years ago as a bridge between their empire and the rest of the galaxy. In the royal nursery, two small dragon babies played together. Their names were Taeyong and Hanul, and they were twins. Their scales were silver like moonlight, and their eyes were golden like the sun. They were only 3 months old, but already they could run and jump and make small chirping sounds that would one day become mighty roars. The twins were never apart. When Taeyong moved to the left, Hanul followed. When Hanul wanted to play with the glowing orbs that floated in the nursery, Taeyong was right beside him. They shared everything, even their thoughts. Dragon twins had a special connection that others could not understand. They could feel each other's emotions and hear each other's minds across any distance. The nursery was a beautiful place. The walls showed images of the dragon homeworld, with its purple skies and floating mountains. Soft music played from hidden speakers, ancient songs that dragon mothers had sung for millions of years. Caretakers moved quietly through the room, making sure the twins had everything they needed. Emperor Miho and Empress Soyeon visited their sons every day. The emperor was massive, with scales that looked like they were carved from black diamonds. The empress was equally impressive, her scales a deep blue that seemed to hold the colors of entire oceans. They loved their sons deeply. Dragon twins were considered sacred, a blessing that happened only once in several generations. That morning started like any other. Taeyong and Hanul were chasing each other around the pillars of the nursery, their small wings flapping even though they were still too young to fly. The caretakers smiled as they watched. Everything was peaceful. Everything was safe. Then the alarm started screaming. The sound was so loud that Taeyong and Hanul stopped playing immediately. Their small bodies froze, and their ears pressed flat against their heads. Red lights began flashing throughout the station. The caretakers rushed toward the twins, their faces filled with fear. "Pirates!" someone shouted in the hallway outside. "The station is under attack." The Kryn Syndicate had chosen that day to strike. They were criminals and thieves who traveled through space, taking whatever they wanted. They had been waiting for months for the right moment to attack the station. Today, many of the Dragon military ships were away on patrol. The station's defenses were weaker than usual. Explosions shook the nursery. The beautiful crystal walls cracked, and some of the floating orbs fell to the ground and shattered. Taeyong pressed himself against Hanul, both twins trembling with fear. They did not understand what was happening, but they knew it was bad. A dragon guard burst into the nursery. His name was Young-ho, and he was responsible for protecting the royal family. "We must evacuate immediately," he shouted. "Get the twins to the escape vessels." The caretakers grabbed Taeyong and Hanul, wrapping them in protective blankets. The station shook again, and the lights went out for a moment before emergency power kicked in. Everything was chaos. Dragons and aliens were running through the hallways, trying to reach safety. The group moved quickly through the corridors. Taeyong could hear his mother's voice in his mind, calling to him through their telepathic connection. She was telling him to be brave, that everything would be okay. But he could feel her fear too, and that made him more scared. They reached the docking bay where several small escape ships waited. These vessels were designed to get people away from the station quickly during emergencies. Caretakers were loading people onto different ships as fast as they could. "Put them both on this vessel," Young-ho commanded, pointing to a ship on the left. But another explosion rocked the station at that exact moment. The blast was so powerful that it knocked everyone to the ground. Taeyong felt his caretaker lose her grip on him. He slid across the smooth floor, his small claws unable to find purchase. Hanul was crying out, reaching for his brother with his small front leg. When the shaking stopped, Taeyong found himself near a different ship than before. A caretaker he did not recognize picked him up and rushed toward a vessel that was already starting to close its doors. "We have to go now," the caretaker yelled. "Wait," Young-ho shouted. "The other twin." But it was too late. The ship's doors sealed shut with Taeyong inside. Through the small window, Taeyong could see Hanul being carried toward a different ship. His twin brother was crying, reaching out with his small legs, trying to get to him. Taeyong pressed his face against the window, his small claws scratching at the glass. Their telepathic connection was strong. Taeyong could feel Hanul's terror and confusion. He sent his own thoughts to his brother, trying to tell him that everything would be okay, that they would see each other soon. But then the ship launched, and everything changed. The distance between them grew rapidly. The escape vessel shot away from the station at incredible speed, following emergency protocols. Taeyong felt the connection with his brother stretch like a string being pulled tight. He cried out, a sound of pure distress that made every creature on the ship look at him with pity. Then, like a string that had been pulled too far, the connection snapped. The emptiness that filled Taeyang's mind was complete and terrible. For his entire life, he had felt Hanul's presence in his thoughts. Even when they were in different rooms, he could sense his brother, feel his emotions, know he was there. Now there was nothing, just a horrible, empty silence where his twin should be. Taeyong screamed. It was not a loud sound. His voice was still too young for that, but it was full of such pain that several of the adults on the ship began to cry themselves. The small dragon baby curled into a ball, his body shaking with sobs. He kept reaching out with his mind, trying to find Hanul, but there was nothing there, only darkness and distance. The escape ship traveled for hours before it was safe to return to the station. By then, the pirate attack had been stopped. The dragons had driven the Kryn away, but the damage was done. Ships had scattered in every direction during the evacuation. Some went to nearby planets. Others traveled to different sectors of space. In all the confusion, no one knew which ship had taken which passengers. When Taeyong was finally brought back to the station, he was still crying. The nursery had been repaired, but it felt wrong now. Empty, incomplete. The Emperor and Empress rushed to their son, relief flooding through them that at least one of their babies had returned safely. But where was Hanul? The question hung in the air as search parties were organized. Communication channels were open to every ship, every planet, every station in the sector. We are looking for a dragon hatchling. The messages said, Silver Scales, 3 months old. His name is Hanul. Days passed with no news. Taeyong refused to eat. He would not drink. He did not respond when his parents spoke to him or when caretakers tried to comfort him. He simply lay in the corner of the nursery, curled into a tight ball, his small body shaking with silent sobs. His golden eyes stared at nothing, seeing only the emptiness where his brother should be. Dragon healers came to examine him. They said his body was healthy, but his spirit was broken. Twin dragons were not meant to be separated. They shared one soul across 2 bodies, and now half of Taeyang's soul was missing. The healers did not know if he would survive. The Emperor stood in the nursery, looking down at his suffering son, and felt completely helpless. He ruled an empire that stretched across 100 worlds. He commanded fleets of starships and armies of warriors. But he could not stop his child from crying. He could not fix what had been broken. Outside the nursery, life on the station continued. Repairs were made. Security was increased. Investigations were launched. But in that one room, time seemed to have stopped. A small dragon baby wept for his lost brother, and no one could help him. Daehoon pushed his cleaning cart through the corridors of the Draconis Imperial Station. He had worked as a janitor here for 12 years, ever since he and his son had arrived from Earth looking for a better life. The pay was decent, and the work was honest. He cleaned floors, polished windows, and made sure everything stayed neat and tidy. Most days, the dragons and other aliens barely noticed him. He was just another human worker, invisible in the background of their important lives. Today was different, though. The station was still recovering from the pirate attack 3 days ago. There was debris to clean up, broken glass to sweep, and scorch marks to scrub from the walls. The work was endless. But Daehoon did not complain. He was grateful that he and his son had survived. Many people had been injured during the attack. His son Jinho walked beside him, carrying a smaller bucket and a mop. The boy was 10 years old, small for his age, with dark hair that always seemed messy no matter how many times Daehoon tried to comb it. The schools were still closed after the attack, So Dahoon had brought his son to work with him. It was better than leaving the boy alone in their small apartment. Dad, why is everyone so sad? Jinho asked as they walked past a group of dragon officials. The dragons were speaking in low voices, their heads bowed. The Emperor's son is sick, Dahoon explained quietly. One of the twin babies. They got separated during the evacuation. Jinho's eyes went wide. The baby dragons? I saw them once when we were cleaning near the royal quarters. They were so small and cute. Dahoon nodded. Yes, those ones. Now one of them is lost somewhere in space, and the other one will not eat or drink. He just cries all day and night. That's so sad, Jinho said softly. The boy had always been sensitive to others' pain. It was one of the things Dahoon loved most about his son, even though he worried it would make life harder for him. They reached the royal quarters where the nursery was located. A dragon guard stood outside the door, his massive form blocking the entrance. What is your business here? The guard asked, looking down at the two humans. Cleaning assignment, Dahoon said, showing his work tablet. We're supposed to clean the outer rooms and hallways. The guard checked the schedule and nodded. Very well, but do not disturb the young prince. He is in the inner chamber. Dahoon and Jinho entered quietly. The royal quarters were beautiful even now, after the attack. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed softly with its own light. Expensive furniture from a dozen different worlds filled the rooms. Everything here cost more than Dahoon would make in his entire lifetime. They started working in one of the outer rooms, Dahoon mopping the floor while Jinho dusted the furniture. But then they heard it, a sound so sad and small that it made Dahoon's chest hurt. It was coming from the inner chamber where the nursery was. Crying. A baby crying with such complete heartbreak that it did not sound real. Jinho stopped working and looked toward the door to the inner chamber. Dad, is that the dragon baby? Yes, Dahoon said quietly. Keep working. It's not our place to interfere. But Jinho set down his duster and walked toward the door. It was slightly open, and through the gap, he could see into the nursery. Dahoon followed his son, ready to pull him back if needed. Inside the nursery, a small dragon lay curled in the corner. He was no bigger than a large cat, his silver scales dull and lifeless. Tears fell from his golden eyes, making small puddles on the floor beneath him. His small body shook with each sob. Around him, several dragon caretakers stood helplessly, trying to coax him to eat or drink. But the baby ignored them all. He's been like that for 3 days, one of the caretakers said to another. The healers say if he doesn't eat soon, he will die. Have you tried the sweet nectar from his home world? We've tried everything. He doesn't respond to anything. Jinho watched through the doorway, his small hands gripping the frame. Dahoon could see tears forming in his son's eyes. The boy had always been like this, feeling the pain of others as if it were his own. Can I go in? Jinho whispered to his father. No, Jinho. These are the royal quarters. We're only here to clean. But nobody is helping him. They're just standing around. They're doing their best. We're just humans. We don't understand dragon customs or how to care for their young. Jinho looked up at his father with those big, earnest eyes. But Dad, he's just a baby who lost his brother. That's something anyone can understand. Dahoon hesitated. His son had a point. And looking at the dragon baby suffering alone despite being surrounded by people, he felt something stir in his chest. He remembered when his own daughter Minji had died 2 years ago. She had been only 5 years old, taken by a disease that the station's doctors could not cure. Jinho had cried just like that dragon baby was crying now, completely broken, lost without his little sister. All right, Dahoon said finally, but we have to ask permission first. They approached one of the caretakers, a tall dragon woman with green scales. She looked down at them with tired eyes. What do you want, humans? My son, Dahoon said, gesturing to Jinho. He would like to try to comfort the young prince, if that would be acceptable. The caretaker laughed, but it was not a mean laugh, just tired and hopeless. We have tried everything. Dragon healers, telepathic specialists, even the Emperor and Empress themselves cannot reach him. What could a human child possibly do? Maybe nothing, Dae-hoon admitted, but maybe something. What harm could it do to try? The caretaker looked at the crying dragon baby, then back at Jinho. Finally, she shrugged. Fine, go ahead, but be gentle. He is a prince of the Dragon Empire, even in his grief. Jinho nodded seriously and entered the nursery properly. The other caretakers watched with curiosity and some amusement. What could this small human boy possibly do that they had not already tried? Jinho walked slowly across the room. He did not go directly to the dragon baby. Instead, he sat down on the floor about 6 feet away, crossing his legs beneath him. He did not try to touch the baby or talk to him. He just sat there quietly. The dragon baby, Taeyong, did not even seem to notice. He continued crying, lost in his own world of pain. Minutes passed. Dae-hoon watched from the doorway, wondering if his son had any plan at all. The caretakers began to lose interest and went back to their other tasks. But Jinho just sat there, patient and still. Finally, after what felt like a very long time, Jinho began to speak. His voice was soft, barely above a whisper. My name is Jinho, he said. I'm 10 years old. I live here on the station with my dad. We clean things to make money. Taeyang's crying did not stop, but one of his golden eyes opened slightly, looking at the human boy. I had a sister once, Jinho continued. Her name was Minji. She was 5 years old, and she loved to draw pictures. She would draw pictures of stars and planets and all the alien species she saw on the station. She wanted to be an artist when she grew up. Jinho paused, and Dae-hoon could see his son's shoulders shake a little. This was hard for the boy to talk about. 2 years ago, she got sick. The doctors tried to help her, but they couldn't. She died in the hospital, and I couldn't even say goodbye because I was at school when it happened. Taeyang's crying had quieted to small hiccups now. Both of his eyes were open, watching the human boy. After she died, I didn't want to eat either, Jinho said. I didn't want to play or go to school or do anything. There was this empty space inside me where Minji used to be. It hurt so much that I thought I would die too. Jinho wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. My dad told me that Minji wouldn't want to stop living, that the best way to remember her was to keep going, to do the things she couldn't do anymore. It didn't make the hurt go away. It still hurts now, sometimes, but it got a little easier. The boy looked directly at the dragon baby now, meeting those golden eyes. I know I can't replace your brother. Nobody can. Brothers and sisters are special. They're not like other people. When they're gone, there's always going to be that empty space. Taeyong made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like a question. Jinho took a breath and said the words that had been forming in his mind. But if you want, I could be your brother too. Not instead of him. Just also, I know I'm a human and you're a dragon. I know we're different, but maybe that's okay. Maybe you can have more than one brother. The nursery had gone completely silent. All the caretakers had stopped what they were doing and were watching now. Dae-hoon felt tears in his own eyes as he watched his brave, kind son offers friendship to a grieving dragon prince. Slowly, very slowly, Taeyong uncurled his small body. He stretched out one front leg, then another. His movements were shaky, weak from days without food. But he began to crawl across the floor toward Jinho. Jinho stayed very still, letting the dragon baby come to him. When Taeyong reached him, the small dragon pressed his snout against Jinho's hand. His scales were cool and smooth, like touching polished metal. More tears fell from his golden eyes, but they seemed different now. Not tears of complete despair, but something else. Something that included a tiny spark of hope. Jinho carefully, very carefully, wrapped his arms around the dragon baby. I'll be your brother, he whispered, if you'll have me. And for the first time in 3 days, Taeyong stopped crying. News of the unlikely friendship spread through the station faster than light speed. Within hours, everyone knew about the human janitor's son who had somehow reached the grieving dragon prince when no one else could. Some people thought it was wonderful. Others were not so sure. Emperor Miho and Empress Soyeon came to the nursery that evening to see for themselves. They found their son eating small bites of food while Jinho sat beside him, telling stories about his life on the station. Taeyong was not completely better. His eyes still held sadness, but at least he was alive. At least he was trying. This human child has saved our son's life, the Empress said softly to her husband. We owe him a great debt. The Emperor nodded slowly. He was a practical dragon who ruled with wisdom, but he was also traditional. Humans were considered a young species, clever but not as advanced as dragons or many other races. To see his son bonding so deeply with a human child was surprising, but he could not deny the results. The boy may visit whenever he wishes, the Emperor declared. He has our permission and our gratitude. Daehoon bowed deeply, pulling his son down into a bow beside him. Your Majesty, we are honored. My son only wanted to help. And help he did, the Emperor said. His massive form towered over them, but his voice was gentle. What is your name, young human? Jinho, your Majesty, the boy said, his voice shaking a little with nervousness. Jinho, the Emperor repeated, as if testing the sound of it. You will be remembered by our family. You have our protection and favor for as long as you live on the station. After that day, Jinho came to visit Taeyong every afternoon after his lessons. Daehoon would bring him to the royal quarters, and the guards would let them pass without question. The Dragon Prince would wait by the door, his small tail wagging with excitement when he heard Jinho's footsteps approaching. The two of them developed their own way of communicating. Taeyong could not speak human languages yet. He was still too young. But he could make different sounds, little chirps and purrs and growls that Jinho learned to understand. Sometimes Taeyong would send feelings directly into Jinho's mind, simple emotions like happiness or curiosity or tiredness. It was not the same as a telepathic bond he had shared with his twin, but it was something. Jinho taught Taeyong human games. They played hide and seek in the royal quarters, though Taeyong was not very good at hiding, because his scales glowed slightly in the dark. They rolled a ball back and forth. They looked at picture books together, with Jinho explaining what everything was. Taeyong showed Jinho things about dragon culture too. He had a special device that made holographic images appear in the air. He showed Jinho his homeworld, with its purple skies and mountains that floated in the air using some kind of ancient technology. He showed him dragon ceremonies and festivals, images passed down through thousands of years. It's beautiful, Jinho would say, his eyes wide with wonder. I wish I could go there someday. Taeyong would make a happy chirping sound and press his snout against Jinho's hand. The gesture meant agreement, meant friendship, meant promise. Not everyone on the station was happy about the friendship. In the Grand Council chamber, where dragon nobles met to discuss important matters, there was growing concern. Counselor Young-ho stood before the Emperor, his red scales gleaming under the lights. He was an old dragon, traditional in his thinking, and he did not approve of what was happening. Your Majesty, I must speak plainly, Young-ho said. This friendship between the young prince and the human child is inappropriate. It goes against our customs. What customs? The Emperor asked calmly. We have no customs about who our children may befriend. But humans are beneath us, another counselor said. They are servants, workers. They do not have our telepathic abilities, our long lifespans, our connection to the ancient powers. How can a dragon prince bond with such a creature? The Empress's eyes flashed with anger. That creature, as you call him, saved our son's life. Where were all of you when Taeyong was dying? Did your telepathic abilities help him? Did your ancient powers comfort him? The council chamber fell silent. No one had an answer to that. But Young-ho was not finished. Your Majesty, I understand your gratitude. The human boy did a good thing. But we must think of the future. What message does this send to the galaxy? That dragons need humans? That we are equal to them? Perhaps we should be asking why a human child succeeded where we failed, the Emperor said quietly. Perhaps there is something we can learn from this. The debate continued for weeks. Some dragons supported the friendship, seeing it as a sign that their species could grow and change. Others saw it as an insult to dragon heritage, a dangerous precedent that would weaken their position in the galaxy. Meanwhile, Jinho and Taeyong did not care about any of this. They were just two children who had found friendship with each other. They played their games, shared their stories, and slowly healed the wounds in their hearts. One day, about 2 months after they had first met, Jinho brought something special to show Taeyong. It was a small wooden box that had belonged to his sister Minji. She kept her drawings in here. Jinho explained, opening the box carefully. Inside were dozens of colorful pictures that a 5-year-old girl had made. Stars and planets, alien creatures, stick figures holding hands. Taeyong looked at the pictures with interest, his golden eyes studying each one. Then he made a sad sound, understanding that these were all that remained of Jinho's sister. Yeah, Jinho said softly. I still miss her. But you know what? Talking to you about her, showing you these pictures, it helps. It's like she's still part of my life, even though she's gone. Taeyong pressed his head against Jinho's shoulder. The boy wrapped his arms around the dragon's neck, and they sat like that for a long time. Your brother is out there somewhere, Jinho said finally. I know he is. And when you're big enough, when you can fly through space, I'll help you look for him. I promise. It was a big promise for a 10-year-old boy to make. But Jinho meant every word of it. The search for Hanul continued, but there was still no news. Ships had scattered so far during the evacuation that it could take months or years to find them all. The Dragon military sent out search parties to different sectors, asking every station and planet if they had seen a silver dragon hatchling. But space was vast, and one small dragon was easy to lose. Taeyong still grieved for his twin. Some nights he would wake up crying, reaching out with his mind for a connection that was not there. But now when that happened, he would call for Jinho through their simple connection. And Jinho would come, sneaking out of his apartment in the middle of the night to sit with his dragon friend until the sadness passed. I'm here, Jinho would say. You're not alone. And slowly, day by day, Taeyong began to believe it. 3 months after the pirate attack, something important happened. The Dragon Council was meeting again, and this time they were discussing Taeyang's education. Dragon princes usually began their formal training at 6 months old, learning history, politics, combat, and the use of their natural powers. The young prince should begin his lessons soon, one counselor said. Despite his trauma, we cannot delay his education forever. Agreed, said another. He will attend the Imperial Academy with the other dragon juveniles. Young-ho stood up. And what of the human boy? Will he be following the prince around the academy as well? This has gone on long enough. The friendship was useful when our prince was dying, but now he is recovering. It is time to separate them and return to proper order. The emperor and empress exchanged glances. They had been expecting this. No, the empress said firmly. Our son has formed a bond with this human child. Breaking that bond now would damage him, perhaps permanently. Then what do you suggest? Young-ho asked, that a human attend the Imperial Academy? That has never been done in the entire history of our empire. The emperor stood up, his massive form commanding everyone's attention. Then perhaps it is time for first. Jinho will be enrolled in the Imperial Academy alongside our son. He will receive the same education, the same opportunities. The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. Dragons arguing with each other, some supporting the decision, others calling it madness. Young-ho's face was dark with anger. Your Majesty, you cannot be serious. A human child learning our secrets, our history, our combat techniques. Why not? The Emperor asked. Are we so afraid of humans that we must keep them ignorant? Or perhaps we are afraid they might prove to be more capable than we thought. It was a challenge, and everyone knew it. The Emperor was testing his council, asking them to examine their own prejudices. Finally, after much debate, the council agreed. It was decided by a narrow vote. Jinho would attend the Imperial Academy, the first human ever to do so. He would study alongside dragon juveniles and a few other alien species who were considered worthy of such education. When Daehoon heard the news, he was overwhelmed. The Imperial Academy was where leaders were trained, where the next generation of the Empire's rulers learned to govern. His son, a janitor's child, will be walking those halls. Are you sure about this? Daehoon asked Jinho that night in their small apartment. It will be hard. The other students might not be kind to you. You'll be the only human there. Jinho nodded seriously. I know, Dad. But Taeyong needs me, and maybe I can learn things that will help us find Hanul someday. I promised I would help. Daehoon hugged his son tightly. You are braver than I ever was at your age. Braver than most adults I know. The next week, Jinho started at the Imperial Academy. He wore a special uniform that had been made for him, sized for a human child rather than a dragon. He carried a tablet for taking notes and a small translation device to help him understand the more complex dragon languages. Taeyong walked beside him through the academy halls, his scales now shinier and healthier than they had been months ago. The other students stared at them, these two unlikely friends, and whispered to each other. Ignore them, Jinho whispered to Taeyong. We have each other. That's what matters. Taeyong chirped in agreement and bumped his head gently against Jinho's side. Their friendship had changed everything. It had saved a dying dragon prince. It had challenged an empire to reconsider its beliefs. And it was only the beginning. 6 months had passed since the terrible day when the twins were separated. Taeyong had grown much larger now. He was no longer the size of a cat, but more like a small pony. His silver scales gleamed with health, and his wings had grown strong enough to let him glide short distances. He still could not fly properly yet, but that would come with time and practice. Jinho had grown too, though not as dramatically as his dragon friend. The boy was now 11 years old, taller and more confident than he had been before. The Imperial Academy had been challenging, but he had worked harder than anyone else. He had to, being the only human among dragons and other powerful species. Some students had been cruel to him at first, but Jinho had proven himself through his determination and kindness. The two friends were inseparable. Where Taeyong went, Jinho followed. Where Jinho studied, Taeyong practiced beside him. They had become so close that some of the older dragons joked that they might as well be twins themselves, even though one was a dragon and one was human. But Taeyong still thought about his real twin every single day. At night, he would reach out with his mind, trying to feel Hanul somewhere in the vast emptiness of space. There was never an answer, just silence. It hurt less than it used to, but the pain was still there, like a scar that healed but never quite disappeared. Then one morning, everything changed. Emperor Miho called an emergency meeting. His face was serious, but also excited in a way that made everyone nervous. Taeyong and Jinho were summoned to the throne room, along with the Empress, and several military commanders. We have received a signal, the Emperor announced, from a remote mining colony in the outer reaches. Someone there has reported seeing a young dragon matching Hanul's description. Taeyang's heart felt like it might explode. He made a sound that was part cry, part roar, pure emotion bursting out of him. Hanul? My brother? We are not certain yet, the Empress said gently, though her own eyes were bright with hope. The report is several weeks old, and the information is unclear, but it is the best lead we have had. Then we must go there immediately. Taeyong said, his young voice fierce with determination. The Emperor's expression darkened. That is the problem. The colony is in territory controlled by the Kryn Syndicate, the same pirates who attacked our station. If we send military ships there, it could start a war. Other governments would see it as an invasion. So what do we do? Jinho asked. We can't just leave Hanul there if he's really there. One of the military commanders, a scar dragon named Kyung-Soo, spoke up. The location is too dangerous. Even if we could send someone, the Kryn control everything in that sector. They would know we were coming. Then we send a small ship, Jinho said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at the human boy. Not a military vessel. Just a small transport that would not attract attention. It could slip in, find out if it is really Hanul, and bring him back. And who would pilot such a mission? Counselor Young-ho demanded. He was present at the meeting, as always watching Jinho with suspicious eyes. You cannot send soldiers without weapons. You cannot send diplomats into pirate territory. It would be suicide. I will go, Taeyong said immediately. He is my brother. I must find him. Absolutely not, the Empress said firmly. You are far too young. You cannot even fly properly yet. Then I will learn quickly, Taeyong insisted. His golden eyes blazed with determination. I promised myself I would find him. I will not break that promise. I will go with him, Jinho said. Everyone turned to stare at the boy again. We are brothers too now. If Taeyong goes, I go. Dahoon, who had been standing quietly in the corner of the room, stepped forward. Your Majesty, please. My son is only 11 years old. You cannot allow this. Your son seems to have already made his decision, the Emperor said. He looked at Jinho with something like respect in his ancient eyes. But the boy is right about one thing. A small ship with no military markings might succeed where an army would fail. The council spent hours debating. Some said it was too dangerous. Others said they had no choice if they wanted to avoid war but still rescue Hanul. Finally, a plan began to form. They would send a small civilian transport ship to the mining colony, but it could not be piloted by anyone important, anyone the Kryn would recognize. It needed to look like just another cargo run, nothing special. I know someone, Daehoon said quietly. Her name is Sumin. She used to fly military ships for Earth's defense forces before she retired. She came to the station 5 years ago and now runs a small cargo business. She owes me a favor. Can we trust her? The Emperor asked. With my life, Daehoon said, and apparently with my son's life too. Sumin was contacted and agreed to help. She was a tough woman in her 50s with short gray hair and arms covered in tattoos from her military days. When she heard about the mission, she laughed. Sneaking into Kryn territory to rescue a dragon prince? That is either the bravest thing I have ever heard or the stupidest. Probably both. Will you do it? Jinho asked her. Sumin looked at the small human boy and the young dragon standing beside him. She saw their determination, their loyalty to each other, and to the lost brother they hoped to find. Yeah, kid, I will do it, but we do this my way. No heroics, no stupid risks. We get in, we find a dragon if he is there, and we get out. Understood? Understood, Jinho and Taeyong said together. The Emperor could not officially support the mission. If anyone asked, he knew nothing about it. But privately, late at night when no one was watching, he gave Daehoon a small object. It was a royal seal, a symbol that carried the Emperor's authority. If you find my son's twin, if you bring him home safely, show them this. They will know I sent you, even if I cannot say so publicly. Preparation for the journey took 3 days. Sumin's ship was small but fast, designed for quick cargo runs through dangerous space. She modified it slightly, adding extra shielding and a few hidden compartments where they could hide if necessary. Jinho packed a small bag with clothes and supplies. His father helped him, neither of them speaking much. There was too much to say and no good way to say it. I wish you were not going, Daehoon finally said. I wish I could go instead of you. I know, Dad, but Taeyong needs me, and Hanul needs us both. Daehoon hugged his son tightly. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Come back safe. I will. I promise. The day of departure arrived. The small ship sat in a private docking bay, away from the main traffic. Only a few people knew what was happening. Taeyong climbed aboard first, his larger size making it a tight fit. Jinho followed. Then Sumin secured the door behind them. Everybody strap in, Sumin said from the pilot's seat. This is going to be a rough trip. We are taking routes that are not exactly legal to avoid Kryn patrols. The ship launched smoothly, slipping out of the station's docking bay and into the darkness of space. Taeyong pressed his face against the window, watching the station grow smaller behind them. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, his twin brother was waiting. The journey took almost a week. They traveled through asteroid fields and used old smuggler routes that Sumin remembered from her military days. Twice they had to hide when Kryn patrol ships passed nearby. Those moments were terrifying, sitting in complete silence while enemy ships drifted past just a few kilometers away. Jinho spent the time preparing himself mentally. He read everything he could about the Kryn, learning their customs and weaknesses. Taeyong practiced controlling his fire breath and strengthening his wings. If they got into trouble, they needed to be ready. Finally, they reached the mining colony. It was an ugly place, just a collection of metal buildings attached to a large asteroid. The colony existed to dig valuable minerals out of the rock and sell them on the black market. It was exactly the kind of place where the Kryn would operate. "All right," Sumin said as they approached. "I am registering us as a cargo ship looking for work. Let me do the talking when we land. You two stay hidden until I figure out where this dragon is." They landed at a dirty spaceport. Sumin went out to talk to the colony officials, while Jinho and Taeyong waited nervously in the ship. Hours passed. Finally, Sumin returned, her face grim. "I found him," she said quietly. "There is a young dragon here matching the description. But we have a problem." "What problem?" Taeyong demanded. "He is not just here. He is owned by someone. The Kryn have been using him in fighting rings. They make young creatures fight each other for entertainment and gambling. Your brother has been fighting for months." Jinho felt sick. Taeyong made a sound of pure rage, smoke coming from his nostrils. "We are getting him out of here," Taeyong growled. "I don't care what it takes." "I was hoping you would say that," Sumin said with a dangerous smile, "because I'd already have a plan. It is risky and probably illegal in about 15 different ways. But if it works, we will have your brother back by tomorrow." She spread out a map of the colony on the ship's small table. "Here is what we're going to do." The rescue attempt was scheduled for the next evening, when the fighting ring would be most crowded. That was when they would make their move. Jinho tried to sleep that night, but could not. He kept thinking about Hanul, about what the poor dragon must have gone through, being forced to fight, being so far from home and family. Beside him, Taeyong was also awake, his golden eyes glowing in the darkness of the ship. "We will save him," Jinho whispered. "I promise." "I know," Taeyong said, and for the first time, he was speaking in common language, words he had finally learned. "Because we are brothers, and brothers never give up on each other. Tomorrow they would face the Kryn. Tomorrow they would risk everything. But tonight, they prepared their courage and hoped it would be enough." The fighting ring was located in the lowest level of the mining colony, deep inside the asteroid where the authorities would not look. The room was large and circular, with metal walls covered in dents and scratches from previous battles. Rows of seats surrounded a pit in the center where the fights took place. The crowd was mostly Kryn pirates, but there were also other species, all of them looking for entertainment and a chance to gamble. Sumin had gotten them inside by pretending to be interested in placing bets. She wore a long coat that hid most of her appearance, and she had given Jinho similar clothing to make him look like her assistant. Taeyong had to stay behind on the ship, which he hated, but he was too recognizable. A healthy dragon would attract too much attention. They found seats near the back and waited. The fights had already started. Jinho watched as different creatures were forced into the pit to battle each other. Most of them were young, barely more than children. His hands clenched into fists as he saw how the crowd cheered when one creature hurt another. "Stay calm," Sumin whispered to him. "We need to wait for the right moment." Then the announcer, a large Kryn with scars across his face, shouted into a microphone. "And now our special attraction, the Dragon Slave. Watch as he fights for his master's glory." The crowd roared with excitement. A door on the far side of the pit opened, and a young dragon was pushed inside. He was silver like Taeyong, but his scales were dull and covered in scratches and old wounds. He was thin, too thin, like he had not been fed properly in months. His wings were folded tight against his body, and his head hung low. Jinho's heart broke. This was Anul, Taeyang's twin brother, but he looked nothing like the happy baby dragon from the station. This dragon looked broken, defeated, like all the hope had been drained out of him. "That's him," Jinho whispered urgently to Sumin. "I know. Get ready. When I give the signal, you run to that side door. I saw the guard there fall asleep earlier. That's our way backstage." Another creature was pushed into the pit, some kind of reptile with sharp claws. The crowd wanted to fight, but Hanul did not move. He just stood there, staring at the ground. The fight master, a cruel-looking Kryn named Tijun who owned Hanul, shouted at the young dragon, "Fight, you worthless beast! Make me proud." Still Hanul did not move. The reptile creature charged at him. At the last second, Hanul dodged, but he did not fight back. He just avoided the attacks, moving like he was in a dream. He doesn't want to fight anymore, Jinho realized. He's given up. The crowd started booing. They wanted action, not this pathetic display. Taijun's face turned red with anger. He pulled out a device and pressed a button. Hanul screamed in pain, falling to the ground. There was a collar around his neck. Jinho realized, and Taijun had just shocked him with electricity. That's it, Sumin growled. We're not waiting anymore. Come on. She stood up and started making her way toward the side door, with Jinho following close behind. The crowd was too focused on the pit to notice two people leaving. They reached the door, and just as Sumin had said, the guard was asleep in his chair. They slipped through into a dark corridor. The sound of the crowd were muffled here. Sumin led the way, moving quickly and quietly. She had studied the layout of this place during the day and knew where they kept the fighters when they were not performing. They found a large room with cages lining the walls. Most were empty now, as the creatures inside were either fighting or waiting their turn. But in the back, they could see where Hanul would be brought after his fight. We wait here, Sumin whispered. When they bring him back, we grab him and run. I've already set charges on 3 different walls throughout this level. When I trigger them, everyone will panic. That's when we make our escape. Jinho nodded, his heart pounding. He could hear the fight still going on, could hear Hanul crying out in pain as he was shocked again and again to make him fight. Finally, after what felt like forever, the fight ended. The crowd booed as Hanul was dragged out of the pit by 2 Kryn guards. They brought him down the corridor, throwing him roughly into one of the cages. Worthless creature, one guard spat. The boss wasted his money buying a dragon. This one doesn't even fight properly anymore. The guards left, locking the cage behind them. As soon as they were gone, Jinho rushed forward. Hanul, can you hear me? The young dragon lifted his head slightly. His golden eyes were empty, lifeless. He looked at Jinho, but did not seem to really see him. We're here to rescue you, Jinho said, gripping the bars of the cage. Your brother Taeyong sent us. He never stopped looking for you. At the mention of Taeyang's name, something flickered in Hanul's eyes. Just for a moment, a tiny spark of recognition. Sumin was already working on the lock with a small device. These cheap cages are easy to crack. Just give me 30 seconds. But they did not have 30 seconds. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Someone was coming back. Hide! Sumin hissed. She and Jinho pressed themselves into the shadows behind some equipment. Taijun entered the room, still angry about the poor performance. He walked up to Hanul's cage and stared at the dragon with disgust. You embarrassed me tonight. Do you know how much money I lost because of you? Maybe I should just sell you for parts. Your scales are worth something at least. He reached for the cage door, and that was when Sumin made her decision. She could not wait any longer. She pressed the trigger on her remote. 3 explosions rocked the building. The walls shook, and dust fell from the ceiling. Alarms started blaring, and they could hear people screaming in panic. Taijun stumbled, confused. Sumin did not give him time to recover. She stepped out of the shadows and hit him hard with a metal pipe she had picked up. The Kryn fell to the ground, unconscious. Jinho, help me with this lock. Sumin shouted over the alarms. Working together, they forced the cage open. Hanul crawled out slowly, his movements weak and uncertain. Jinho wanted to hug him, to comfort him, but there was no time. Can you walk? Sumin asked the dragon. We need to move now. Hanul nodded slowly. He was bigger than Taeyong, having grown during his months in captivity, but he was so thin and weak that he could barely stand. They started moving through the corridor, heading toward the exit, but other guards were coming, drawn by the explosions. They rounded a corner and came face to face with 5 armed Kryn. Stop right there, one of them shouted, raising a weapon. Jinho stepped in front of Hanul, spreading his arms wide. It was a foolish thing to do. He was just a small human boy with no weapons, no powers, nothing but his courage. But he could not let them take Hanul back. You'll have to go through me first, Jinho said, his voice shaking but determined. The Kryn laughed. Foolish human child, what can you possibly do? But while they were focused on Jinho, they did not notice Sumin moving. She threw something small that rolled between the guard's feet. A flash grenade. The explosion of light blinded everyone for a few seconds. In that chaos, Sumin grabbed both Jinho and Hanul and pulled them down a different corridor. They ran through the maze of passages, the alarm still screaming. Behind them, they could hear guards shouting and giving chase. Hanul was struggling to keep up, his weak body barely able to run. Come on. Jinho encouraged him. Your brother is waiting for you. Taeyong never gave up on you. Don't give up now. Something changed in Hanul's eyes. That spark grew a little brighter. He pushed himself harder, finding strength he did not know he still had. They burst out of the building into the spaceport. Sumin's ship was waiting, engines already running. Taeyong was visible in the doorway, and when he saw his twin brother, he let out a roar of joy and recognition. Hanul, brother. Hanul stopped running. He stared at Taeyong, and suddenly all the walls he had built around his heart came crashing down. Taeyong, he whispered. His voice was rough from months of not speaking, except to scream in pain. Yes, it's me. We came for you. The two dragons rushed toward each other. They pressed their heads together, their minds finally reconnecting after so many months apart. The telepathic bond snapped back into place like it had never been broken. Both of them started crying, tears of joy and relief and pain all mixed together. We have to go now, Sumin shouted. Guards were pouring out of the building, weapons raised. All four of them scrambled into the ship. The door sealed behind them just as the first energy blast hit the hull. Sumin was already in the pilot seat, her hands flying over the controls. Hold on to something. The ship launched with such force that everyone was thrown backward. They shot up from the asteroid surface, dodging weapons fire and other ships that were trying to intercept them. Sumin flew like the military pilot she used to be, making impossible turns and using every trick she knew. They made it out of the colony's airspace and jumped to faster-than-light speed. They were safe. They had done it. In the back of the ship, the three boys sat together. Taeyong and Hanul were still pressed close, not wanting to separate again. Jinho sat nearby, giving them space but staying close. Who is this? Hanul asked his brother, looking at the human boy with confusion. This is Jinho. Taeyong said, he is my brother. He saved me when you were gone, and now he helped save you too. Hanul looked at Jinho with those tired golden eyes. Your brother? But he's human. I know, Taeyong said, but he said something to me once that changed everything. He said you can have more than one brother. That brothers don't have to be the same. Jinho moved closer slowly. I know I can't replace Taeyong. You two share something special. But if you want, I could be your brother too. Just also, Hanul was quiet for a long moment. He had been through so much pain, so much cruelty. It was hard to trust anyone. But he looked at this small human boy who had risked his life to rescue a dragon he had never met. He felt his twin brother's happiness and love for this human. And slowly, very slowly, he nodded. Okay, Hanul whispered. You can be my brother too. Jinho smiled and carefully wrapped his arms around both dragons. They sat like that for hours as the ship carried them home. When they finally returned to the Draconis Imperial Station 2 weeks later, the whole place celebrated. Emperor Miho and Empress Soyeon wept with joy as they held both their sons again. The dragon nobility could no longer deny what everyone could see. This human child had achieved something no dragon could do. He had kept a promise to his brother and brought the lost prince home. A ceremony was held in the Grand Hall. Jinho and his father were granted honorary dragon clan status. Sumin was given a full pardon for any laws she might have broken and a generous reward. But more important than any of that was what happened next. Taeyong, Hanul, and Jinho stood together on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Hanul was recovering, getting stronger every day with proper food and medicine and love. The scars on his body would heal. The scars on his heart would take longer, but he was not alone anymore. Thank you, Hanul said to Jinho, for not giving up on me. Brothers don't give up on each other, Jinho replied. Taeyong pressed his head against both of them. We are family now. All three of us. Nothing will separate us again. A year passed. Taeyong and Hanul grew strong and learned to fly properly. Jinho continued his studies at the Imperial Academy and became known as the bridge between humans and dragons. Together, the three of them showed the galaxy that family was not about species or blood. It was about choice, loyalty, and love. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person could do was offer their heart to someone who was different from them and say those simple words that could change everything. I'll be your brother.